Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 434. Today we're going to talk about Champions of Midgard. This is from Gray Fox Games, and it's just hitting stores now. Plays 2 to 4 players. It is a worker placement game. You will be recruiting different types of Vikings. They have different sort of weapons and fighting styles. Basically, that's just different colored dice that are different custom dice. So you go and recruit those. You'll get some food to sort of send them off on their journeys, and you'll fight different monsters and, like I said, go on different journeys and try to get different rewards and things. And then you maybe will go visit like the Mystic or the Seer, and they'll give you sort of visions to help you on your journeys, and there's other different things like that. So it's very much a Euro game, but it's got some cool dice rolling and sort of combat aspects to it. Let's take a look at how the game works a little bit, and then I will tell you what I think of it. So in the game of Champions of Midgard, players are trying to be just that. They're trying to be champions of their village, fighting off trolls, invading Draugr, and then going off on different expeditions and things to get more glory and more coins and hire new different Vikings and different types of Vikings to take on their quests with them. So each player can take one of these different player boards. This will depict a different Viking leader, and each of these will have a different special ability. You'll start with the same stuff. So you get 3 workers, a coin, a favor token, a wood, and a food. And you can see here there's a white die, and everybody starts with one of these, and this depicts a swordsman. So the white die are the swordsman. And we can take a look here at the special ability for Uller, and it says gain 1 victory point each time you roll 1 or more 2-hit results in a round of battle. So you can see one of the possible results on this die is either 1 sword or 2 swords. So the 2 swords counts as 2 hits. Now these swordsmen also have the ability to roll a shield, which would block a hit coming back at you. And there are 3 different types of dice. There's the white swordsman, the red spearman, and then the black axeman. So kind of working our way down the board, we're going to restock the various cards each round. In this case, we've got the trolls and the Draugr, and we can go and fight actually these monsters. These are going to be invading our little village here. And then we'll populate the village here. So you can see some various worker placement spots. Each round will add new resources to each of these 4 blue spots in the middle. And similar to Agricola and things like that, if nobody goes to these spots to take them, they'll accrue more throughout the game until they get so good that nobody can resist taking them. Over on the side of the board here, these little spaces are going to be randomized, and there's going to be a varying number of these and types of these based on the number of players. And then we've got a stack here of 8 merchant ships, and there'll be a new one of these each turn. And these are little spots that you can go and kind of deal with the merchants that are currently in port. For example, this one you could trade a coin for 2 axemen. And then the next thing to note are these different ships. So there's 2 public longships, and these are ships that players can use to go on voyages, and they're available each round and will return to the spot at the end of the round. But depending on the number of players, there'll be some ships available that players can purchase and build for themselves. Each player can build one of these ships, sort of a personal ship, each game. And finally, at the bottom of the board, you can see these distant journey spaces. Depending if you're playing a 2 or 3 or 4 player game, different lanes will be available, and you can take a ship that you've either rented, so to speak, or purchased earlier, and go on a journey and try to defeat these different monsters at the bottom of the board. So your turn's very simple. You take one of your meeple workers and you'll put it on one of the spots. You might put it on a monster, and that kind of cues you up to fight the monster after everybody's done placing all their workers. Or you might go to somewhere and get some resources, get some food or wood or coins, or get some more Vikings to then roll and then fight different monsters. You might fight the troll who's invading, or you might, go on a journey on a ship, take some warriors with you, take some dice with you. You'll have to feed those dice, feed those workers or those warriors, and then fight the monsters at that point. That's where a lot of your big points are going to come from. So let's take a look at just a couple examples. Here we've got one of the random buildings that's drawn. In this case, it's kind of like the merchant ship I showed you. 2 coins, you can get a swordsman and an axeman. We've got another spot here. You can simply go here and get 1 wood and 1 food. Now, more interesting, we have the runesmith here, and here you can see you can pay a wood and get one of the 2 face-up rune cards. And there's always going to be 2 face-up. If you purchase one, you'll refresh a new one from the deck. These are always kind of one-shot sort of get-out-of-jail-free cards, or little special abilities that you can do. You can see they're worth different victory points at the end of the game. So on the left, we have knowledge, that's worth 3 victory points. Healing is worth 2. And they have some cool special abilities. So knowledge gives you the ability to view all of the face down journey cards. I'll talk about journeys more. And then on the right, you have negate the losses suffered in a single round of combat, which can come in handy if you don't want to lose all your Vikings that you just sent to fight the dirty troll. And next we can look at the Sage House. So when we go to the Sage House, we can look at one of the face down journey cards, and then you draw the top card from this deck. And these are going to be various ways to score points at the end of the game. Sort of like quest cards if you think of them that way. Let's take a look at some examples. First we've got Troll Slayer, and this is have the most troll cards at the end of the game. So you've defeated the most trolls. Next one here is Prosperous, says have the most money at the end of the game. And then finally we have Crusher of Ice, have the most blue enemy cards at the end of the game. Now if we scroll down a little bit here, we can see that you get a varying number of points for each of these cards. On the left, we have 6 points with a little single pawn, and on the right, we have 3 points with 2+. If you indeed have the most blue enemy cards, you will get the 6 points. If you're tied, however, with somebody else, you'll get the reduced amount of points. And we've got some of your standard worker placement spots. This allows you to take the start player, plus get a swordsman from the supply. The worker hut space will allow you to pay some money to get some of your extra workers that aren't available to you to start the game. And finally, we have the ship right here. You're going to have to pay a certain amount of money, a certain amount of wood to take the appropriate ship. Now, of course, you can take an action to either take one of the public ships or your own private ship and put it into one of these lanes and try to then go and hunt the monster that's at the end of your journey. And this is similar to the spots at the top of the board, for example, this troll spot, where you place your worker and then you're sort of queuing yourself up once we go into assigning your Vikings and resolving combat. So let's talk about fighting the trolls. So all monsters are going to have the same stats here at the top. So this one has an attack of 3, a defense of 2. So the defense is your first concern because this is the amount of hits you need to kill it. So after you roll your dice, you're going to roll a variety of different dice. Let's say we had assigned these 3 Vikings, one of each type, and we rolled this result. So in this case, we've got our 2 hits. You can see our axe has 2 axes, so that's 2 hits. That's enough to kill it. But then, whether we killed it or not, we're going to take some damage back, in this case 3. However, we rolled 1 shield. That's going to block 1 of those, so 2 of those are going to get through. So we're going to have to kill and remove 2 of these dice and put them back into the supply. So we've lost 2 Vikings, but we did defeat the troll. Now, the rewards are going to vary from creature to creature. In the case of the troll, you're going to get a certain amount of victory points, in this case 7, and then you're always going to get some wood. And then you're going to have to deal with blame. Now, blame is very interesting. So if nobody decides to go and fight a troll, everybody's going to get 1 blame distributed throughout the players. Now, at the end of the game, you're going to lose a varying amount of victory points based on how much blame you have. So you don't want to get too much because you can lose quite a bit of points. But let's say I did go and fight the troll. I go, that means I can discard 1 of my blame, and then I choose somebody else to draw or obtain 1 more blame. It's actually kind of wonky thematically, which I'll talk about in the review, but it works really, really well in terms of a game mechanic. So that's the interesting thing about the troll. Now, all of the others that you fight, the draugrs and stuff, nothing's going to cause any blame, but you're going to go there and fight. You're going to get coins and victory points for fighting them. And then you're going to go on the journeys and fight the monsters at the bottom of the board. So let's talk about those monsters. Now let's take a look at this example, this Drekki. So you see it's got an attack of 3, a defense of 2. It's going to give you 15 victory points, which is a good chunk. But you can see it's got the sword with sort of an X through it. That means swordsmen aren't going to be able to do any damage and aren't even worth bringing to this fight. And you've also got a reward of a favor token. Everybody starts with 1 of these favor tokens, and you're going to acquire more throughout the game. Each one's worth 2 victory points at the end of the game, but you can spend them to re-roll any amount of dice that you wish during a round of combat. Now, before you fight the monsters, you're going to have to resolve a little bit of a feeding phase. Now, depending on how far along you are on the journey, kind of moving right to left is the further away that you're going to travel from your village. So in this case, you can actually see this particular lane is going to cost you 1 food for every 2 dice or 2 Viking that you send on the voyage. Or if you move further away, it's going to cost you 1 food for each dice. So it's a little more expensive to go here. Now, after you've paid your food, you're going to have to reveal and resolve the journey card. Sometimes nothing happens, but let's say in this case, you're sort of lost at sea and you have to lose 2 items. So that can be food or a Viking die. Now you might say, why would I ever go fight the monsters that are farther away? Well, they might be worth more victory points, but each round that they sit there, you're actually going to put a coin on them. And the coins are very important in the game. The economy is pretty tight. So as these build up more coins, it's definitely going to be worth your while to go and try to fight one of these more distant monsters. Okay, so that is Champions of Midgard. What do I think of the game? Well, I gotta be honest with you, I am debating keeping Lords of Waterdeep. Now, I think I'll still keep Lords of Waterdeep because it's been successful with the family. This game has also been successful with the family, but it's a little bit looser, Lords of Waterdeep, a little bit more freewheeling. This game, it seems like it would be a little bit looser because you've got sort of random dice rolling and a little bit more kind of free-flowing combat, but it's very tight. You've got to really manage the food, obviously, to send your Vikings out. You need to get some food in. You want to go grab those good Vikings, and the different dice, the different Vikings, they're very different in nature. Like the swordsmen are sort of your weaker spearmen, but they've got, the extra shield and stuff. And then the axemen, no shields, but they've got some more chances to hit. So there's a balance there, and so you're racing to get those and get the cool ones. You might have a special ability, like one of the Viking leaders that you get. They have a little bit of a bonus, not a little bit, they have a big bonus when they use the swordsman. So they take those quote unquote lesser warriors, but they get extra hits when they use them. So you're trying to get at the Vikings, get at the resources, get at the coins, which are very crucial. So sort of upgrading your Vikings and, possibly buying more of those favor tokens, which are very handy because that allows you to re-roll the dice. So the worker placement aspect of this is super tight. And you've got this whole blame aspect, which it's kind of funny because, okay, so thematically it's a little weird because it's like, okay, nobody fought the troll. Okay, everybody gets blamed because nobody helped out. You're all too busy worrying about your voyages and going and pillaging, across the sea and all this stuff. That makes sense. But then, so I go and kill the troll and I reduce my blame. Makes perfect sense. But then I hand the blame to somebody else, pretty much. And that's weird. But it works really well. In terms of like sort of balancing the game, I really like that mechanic because it makes it super tense. Like it just adds that little edge to the game of that little bit of nastiness. You can kind of chase a leader a little bit with that, but it's not overwhelming. But it is going to be crucial at the end of the game. So it's like just enough little meanness in there. But for some reason, I just have an issue with it thematically. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I just look right past it. The other thing that you can get points for is if you see there were different colors of the monsters. For each set of 3, so a blue, a yellow, and a red, you get extra 5 points. And then you have your your sort of quests, your hidden victory points at the end of the game. Those are really cool. The different special abilities you can get from the runesmith is very neat. So you might go after that kind of stuff early, get those sort of mitigating abilities, and get the quests to kind of help steer strategy a little bit. So there's a good balance there. Overall, it's a very different sort of tight Euro with a really good theme that makes a lot of sense, except for that blame part. Now take that blame thing out, which is maybe one day I can work it out in my head, but the rest of the game, thematically, it just works amazing. Now I just reviewed Blood Rage, and awesome, amazing game. I love it if you watch the review. This one to me does the Viking theme better. It makes more sense. The mechanics fit better with it. Now I'm keeping both games in the collection. This one's probably, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't thought too much about it. This will probably get in my top 10 of the year or close. It'll get close, but it's going in the collection to stay in there. That's the important part. But the theme of it, sort of the journeying, going to visit the mystic to tell you, okay, I foresee on the journey you're going to run into nothing, or you're going to run into a storm or something. That's really cool. And then going to visit, so you have that sort of Viking mysticism and sort of also the village and interacting with the merchant ships and just that sort of hustle and bustle of that sort of, Viking life and all that stuff. And sort of that extra mysticism of, the seer and the trolls and the dragons and the faraway land and all that stuff. Really excellent job of doing that. So thematically, there's a I think Lords of Waterdeep is pretty thematic myself. A lot of people, they break down. I think if you thought Lords of Waterdeep was like, you expected more out of it, you were one of those few people that didn't like it. I'm teasing my friend Lance. This is going to just be right down your alley. This is kind of what you expected out of Lords of Waterdeep. Now, I still like Lords of Waterdeep, but this one is like really close to like replacing it. The other thing I want to mention was the different special abilities is really a neat aspect of the game. Gives you a little bit of that sort of starting off the game differently each time, and then you can kind of combine that with your quests and things as you get rolling in the early rounds. So it plays pretty quick too, 8 rounds that'll go by really fast. And, like I said, it's just that really well-rounded, well-polished, integrated well with the theme, tight, good strategically, but not super heavy. You know, red, sort of that medium to lighter, but it's more in the medium, but it's kind of on the lighter side of medium, but closer to medium kind of thing. So that is Champions of Midgard. Really check this out. Yeah, I think a lot of people are really going to like this one. So thanks.